Scientists are mystified and still trying to figure out why stellar sea lions are disappearing from the Gulf of Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, what is causing it, and why should we be concerned are only two questions Dr. Andrew Trites and his team are trying to answer. Dr. Trites is a professor and director of the Marine Mammal Research Unit at the Fisheries Center at UBC. He has served as a member of the U.S. Stellar Sea Lion Recovery Team and the Canadian Killer Whale Recovery Team. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Andrew Trites back to Studio 4 to tell us more. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Last time you were here, you were putting together a rather large whale, a large blue whale, about a year ago.
That's right, and that's now finished, and she is just phenomenal. It's such a rare thing, such a huge, huge animal, and we've now had thousands and thousands of people come to see her.
And I'm sure your family is happy because you told me last time that when you are digging up a whale, it's a smelly situation.
That's right. I had to change my wardrobe. And so those clothes are long gone. I'm into a new set.
Tell me a little bit about the blue whale, the original discovery and all of that before we get into sea lion land.
Right. Well, the blue whale, it goes back to the fact that the students and professors at UBC had collected over 2 million specimens, and it was going into a new museum, and they're looking for some kind of a centerpiece, something truly unique. And so I thought, why not go to get something that almost no one's ever had before, which is the world's largest animal. And so that's what we did. A whole team of us worked together. We discovered that a blue whale had been buried in Prince Edward Island 20 years earlier. We went out and found the spot where it had been buried, but what we didn't account for was the fact that this whale was still completely covered in skin and blubber and meat and still even fresh blood 20 years underground.
Hence the smell.
That's right. So that was the start of essentially a 3-year journey, which finished at the Beaty Museum. It is now the centerpiece, and Discovery Channel did a documentary as well, so they have caught every moment of this process.
I'm sure they have, and transporting the bones alone. I'm assuming you brought the bones to UBC and then put the whale together. Did you put the whale together and rent a giant truck?
Well, that was where we're lucky, is that Sea and Rail gave us a whole, essentially, container truck to bring it across the country. Donated, they drove it across for us. And after that, it wasn't just a simple thing of putting essentially the pieces of Lego back together again. We had a Humpty Dumpty situation in our hands. And there we had to bring in artists and sculptors and people who could repair what was supposed to have been 180 bones turned into be 1,000 broken pieces.
And this whale is like 2 bus
length of 2
long?
buses, and it's put in a way that you can go down underneath her, you can walk the full length. Her mouth is only a third of the way open. If it could open all the way, it would go right down to the floor. And it is quite inspiring to think that a mammal essentially has many of the same features that you and I have, can grow to be that big,
exactly.
that gigantic.
And she's nature and she's art. She's so beautifully hung at the museum and lit.
That's right. No, and that's what's so interesting is that in many ways, you know, the human skeleton really is, it's nature's art. It is sculpture.
I think I told you last time you were here that in grade 9 I had to put a chicken together.
Yes.
And it took me forever. And you'd think we would get how to put a chicken together, but that was difficult, so I can't imagine.
Yeah, no, it is something for people to come and see. It's one thing to be told it's the world's biggest animal. It's another thing to actually pace it out.
And are there people who make their living putting together blue whales or giant creatures?
You know, you can count them on one hand. And the fellow who did this, Mike DeRoos, he started out as an undergraduate student, and his class project in my marine mammal course was to build a sea otter. And literally, when he brought this back to class, it looked like someone bringing the first piece of artwork home from daycare. We gave lots of praise, but you know, he has now taken what became just, let me try it, to now an art form. He is a master articulator. He's up there with the Picassos.
I'm sure he is. What fascinated you about marine mammals when you began your journey?
You know, if my background actually, if I go back to high school and then into university, is what I loved was mathematics. And I really started out to specialize in math. But as I went on, I grew up in Nova Scotia. My dad was a physical oceanographer. We spent our summers on the beaches in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So I always had this passion for the oceans. At the same time, there was a way that I could use what I could really do well, which is math. And I discovered that in the field of biology, and particularly with ecology, that you really need to have good quantitative skills as well. And so I found my little niche in there. I became interested in how does a whole ecosystem work. And I started focusing essentially at the top end of this ecosystem. And I'm still looking down now from the point of view of a killer whale, a sea lion, trying to understand how this whole ecosystem works. So to me, it's like an ecological mystery.
Sure. Little geometry, little trigonometry, little something, little this, little that. But if anybody needs to count bones, you can do that.
I can keep track of them.
With your high math mind, yes. The stellar sea lion, tell me about her or him.
Well, in the world we have 5 species of sea lions. 2 occur in Canada, in British Columbia. None of them are on the East Coast, they're all in the Pacific Ocean. And we have the California sea lion and the stellar sea lion. The California sea lion breeds in Mexico and California, and only the males come up here into British Columbia because they're bigger. And you can tell them from the stellar sea lion, because the stellar sea lion, that is the biggest species of sea lion in the world.
The stellar.
The stellar. So for example, when a sea lion pup is born, it's 35 to 50 pounds. And mama, she's no slouch either. She's weighing 600 to 800 pounds. And dad is anywhere from 2 to 3 times bigger. So in the breeding season, you have these gigantic males that have put on all this extra weight. They weigh over 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
And so it's truly is something phenomenal to see the size of these animals. Now here, just for example in Vancouver, we can sometimes see both Californians and stellars together.
Do they get along?
For the most part, they you know, in the way we get along well with our California neighbors.
Okay.
You can tell them apart though, because the California sea lions tend to be a little bit more obnoxious than the stellars. They bark incessantly like a dog, whereas the stellar sea lions, they roar more like a lion. In terms of looking at them, the California sea lion is a bit smaller, but its head is very box-shaped.
And it looked on the screen, and I'm not sure if it's just the picture, like the stellar was a little slicker.
That's right. It's more of a smooth, round dome. So much more elegant looking and just an impressive animal.
And are they disappearing, the stellars? Are the
No, the Californians are booming. They were hunted down to extremely low numbers. They are now recovering. We believe they're now back to their pre-exploitation numbers. And that becomes another issue because during their absence, people started using the coastline in different ways. And now off California, some we have sea lion, even harbor seals coming out. They want to use the same beaches where people have these million-dollar homes. And so there are conflicts as nature reestablishes its presence.
Because if you're in the $1 billion in Laguna or someplace, I guess you don't want a barking sea lion.
That's right, all night long. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do they eat? What do stellars eat?
They eat quite a diversity of fish, and people often think that they call them their opportunistic feeders. Because, you know, indeed we can find that they've eaten over 100 different species. But really, I think it's a misnomer. It's no more different than saying that you and I are opportunistic, because we've all eaten over 100 different types of food. But the reality is that we're also creatures of habit. You probably eat a similar thing at breakfast each day, and so or dinner, whatever. And so in the end, when we look at sea lions, they do have some preferred species. So on their top 10 list, they would eat things such as sculpins, octopus, salmon, herring, sand lance.
Cod.
Cod.
What's a sand lance? I was reading that in the information you sent. A sand lance.
A sand lance is a fairly small, silvery fish. It spends a lot of time sort of burrowed in the sand, and head pops up. They do school. They are very, very important fish for seabirds and very important fish for mammals too, because they are so chock full of energy and oil.
Okay, and are they abundant?
We don't know a whole lot about their abundance because in North America we don't catch them. We don't eat them.
Right.
And therefore we don't assess how many are there. Whereas other species that we do catch, such as herring, salmon, cod, these are assessed, and some of those species are eaten by sea lions, and those numbers of those species have changed over time.
And I'm assuming that if the sea lions are eating the salmon, that there's been some culling going on or not?
It depends on sort of where we look. I mean, for the most part, I think there's a truce between fisheries and sea lions.
Right.
You know, they're going to find a way to get along together.
But the disappearing stellar sea lions, the numbers are quite startling. When we come back, we'll talk about, I know you don't know for sure what's happening, but you've got some theories, some hypotheses.
Right.
Okay. Dr. Andrew Trites, our guest, he's a professor at UBC, director of the UBC Marine Mammal Unit. We'll come back.